Okay, welcome to the Introduction to Experience 1 for Entrepreneurship 621. This is a guided tutorial, which is really a fancy way of saying that I'm going to provide a little bit of an overview, an introduction, an orientation, a primer, sort of whet your appetite, so to speak, for the material that's going to be covered in this phase of the course. Obviously, we have 5 experiences in the course, and each of the experiences you're going to have one of these guided tutorials to start you off. And I do recommend that you watch and absorb these guided tutorials before you grapple with the materials in each of the phases. But feedback from prior courses, cohorts of students have indicated that they found that these guided tutorials were really helpful for them in getting them oriented and giving them some insight into the material beyond just the readings, because I'm going to provide some of my thoughts and interpretations as well. And occasionally I'll introduce some concepts that may or may not be in the materials. And in fact, in this tutorial for Experience 1, I'll use some examples that maybe help deepen your understanding of the material. So hopefully you find these valuable. They tend to range anywhere from about 20 minutes to 60 minutes. So I know that seems daunting, that you're going to sit and watch and listen to me, but I think, again, based on past feedback, the students have said, wow, it seemed like, at first that seemed like a lot, but then they said they started looking forward to these and found them incredibly valuable. So I keep doing them as a result of that. So in this guided tutorial for Experience 1, we're going to cover all the major topics, and as I said before, try and give you a little insight into maybe what the material means and maybe even why I assigned it. So by way of this tutorial, we're going to cover 4 major topics, and you're going to see this theme repeated in the readings, and then also the movie allows you to kind of try and pull out some of these learning lessons as well. So basically what we're going to be covering in this guided tutorial is, what is entrepreneurship? It is a loaded word. It has different meanings for different people. It's almost become a very common word in the culture here in the United States. And so as I travel around and I talk to people about entrepreneurship, I get lots of different definitions, lots of different interpretations, and it gets a little confusing. So, and some of it's wildly different from what I think entrepreneurship is and what many of my peers think entrepreneurship is in this field of academia where we kind of study and teach it. So we're going to grapple with that first and foremost. Second is, entrepreneurship means that there's somebody doing it, and probably the most interesting part of teaching entrepreneurship and working with entrepreneurs for many, many years is figuring out who these people are and why they do what they do. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Why people become entrepreneurs is equally interesting, because sometimes it doesn't make any sense to as one of my friends said, no rational human being would take risk to go out and start a business when the outcome is unknown. So we'll talk a little bit about why people go down this path in life. And last but not least, the question of if you start a business, are you an entrepreneur? And that's kind of it seems like we'll talk a little bit more about that as I progress through it. It seems like the obvious answer would be, of course, yeah, if you start a business, you're an entrepreneur. But I think it's a deeper conversation that we need to have to get to the point where we understand this whole idea of what entrepreneurship is and who entrepreneurs are. So let's start with, what is entrepreneurship? The common definition, or a common thing I find from people is, when I talk about entrepreneurs, or somehow we get onto the conversation of entrepreneurship, that people have wildly different views of this. everything from, I talk to people and they think, oh, entrepreneurs are the Bill Gates, it's the people that started Google, it's the Amazons, it's the Facebooks, it's all, these high tech, high growth, the companies that ultimately become, major industry players, multi-billion-dollar companies. Everything from that all the way down to, oh yeah, I've got a good friend who's an entrepreneur. He has a consulting business. He runs out of his house. It's just him. Or, oh yeah, my neighbors have a little small pizza shop in the local strip mall, and they have like 5 employees. Yeah, they're entrepreneurs. So there's all these different definitions about what entrepreneurship is, and I think the commonalities among those different viewpoints, whether they've got like a little small mom and pop shop or they're a big, Amazon type company, is that they all involved creating a new venture. They all involved some risk taking, and they all focused on some kind of an opportunity. And there may or may not have been some innovation involved. But and typically when we're looking at startup companies, we're seeing those factors involved. Probably the most widely accepted definition, if you will, of entrepreneurship that I've come across over the years comes from Howard Stevenson out of Harvard. And he basically distilled down entrepreneurship into what he called the pursuit of opportunity beyond resources controlled. And I've always kind of liked that definition because it's short, which means it's easier for me to remember, and others to remember as well. And then 2, it focuses on pursuing opportunity without regard for the resources that people have at hand. So it means that they may not have all the resources, but they're still going to go after this. They're going to find a way to make it happen, and they're pursuing some kind of an opportunity, whether it's a local market opportunity or it's a global opportunity. But there's some opportunity there. There's a need or a demand or a problem that needs to be solved, and they're going to pursue that opportunity to take care of that. So it's short, sweet, and to the point. The other thing I like about it is it doesn't delineate, and I think this is really, really important. It doesn't delineate any context. So it says pursuit of opportunity beyond resources controlled. Well, that can happen in the for-profit environment. That can happen in the nonprofit environment. That can happen in the government, the public sector. That can happen within an existing corporation where you have various managers at multiple levels that are pursuing opportunities beyond resources controlled. So you could have corporate entrepreneurs, you could have social entrepreneurs, you could have for-profit entrepreneurs, you could have public sector entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs. So I like it from that perspective that it doesn't delineate that there's a context, and I think that's important for me, is that context is not important when we talk about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship can happen in any context. The fundamental thing that I think I always go back to when people ask me, about entrepreneurship is it does involve creating something new and pursuing some kind of an opportunity, no matter what the context. So that's a simple look at entrepreneurship. I'd be curious to see in the discussions what you guys think of entrepreneurship, but for now, I think that's just a basic introduction to this whole concept that involves pursuing opportunities, creating new ventures, and involving some risk-taking. Then we take a look at, who are the people that do this entrepreneurship thing? Who are these entrepreneurs? The question mark, all these people. What is it drives them? And I think the thing we found over the years is that there's no one specific profile. That entrepreneurs are difficult to pin down as hard as we've tried. And over the years, folks in the academic field have looked at trying to understand who entrepreneurs are based on their traits and their characteristics. So, we often think of entrepreneurs as people that are risk takers, that are proactive, that have a bias for action, that they're highly self-motivated, that they're determined, that they have high levels of perseverance and grit. There's all these different traits and characteristics that have been studied over the years that we think have some bearing on whether you're an entrepreneur or not. Then we've looked at behaviors. What specific behaviors do people engage in that make them more entrepreneurial versus less entrepreneurial? And then lastly, how they think. The more recent view of entrepreneurs, and you're going to get some readings related to this, is how do these people think? What are the cognitive processes that make them unique or stand out or different from people that are not entrepreneurs? So I think you're going to get a little bit of a, as you kind of navigate the readings in this experience, you're going to get a little bit of flavor of all three of those things. And I think that last piece, the how they think, that was a real sea change in the field of studying entrepreneurship. And it's that the cognitive aspect has become really, really popular among researchers. And I think it's got some really interesting findings that will inform our understanding of who these people really are. And then the last piece of the puzzle that you kind of want to think about is, and I think this is pertinent for you as you navigate this class, is, are entrepreneurs born or are they made? And I get asked this question all the time. It's a very common question, and people are really interested in it. Is like, do people come out of the womb as entrepreneurs, or are they some kind of a sort of collage of experiences and that shape them and they end up being entrepreneurs? And I think the interesting aspect of this is that you get some pretty strong arguments on both sides. I've talked to people that are adamant that it's in the DNA and that there's really nothing substantive you can do that will change that people are kind of on a path to be entrepreneurs based on their, for lack of a better word, their chemical makeup. And then you get people on the other side that say, hogwash. Entrepreneurship is a construction of behaviors and characteristics that happen through experience, through life trials, and that people they make a conscious selection to be an entrepreneur. It's not something that's in their DNA that's driving them. And so I think it's an interesting debate, something we'll have in the discussion. And I think my perspective has always been that I think there's a strong validity in both approaches, but I always tend to fall towards the center. And I think even my own experience informs me that there are certain characteristics and certain things that are embedded in your DNA. You are kind of propelled on that path, but there's an equal number of experiences and life-shaping occurrences that can push you into the entrepreneurial path. And I've seen examples of both. I've seen people that, I've even seen it with students that, really, I wasn't sure how much entrepreneurial potential they had, but over time, through experience and through hard work and through self-reflection of what their weaknesses were, they crafted themselves into a very good entrepreneur. And in fact, we had this discussion, myself and a student, about a year ago. One of our undergraduate students came in and he was essentially complaining about some of his classmates, that they weren't very entrepreneurial and that our program should have some sort of a mechanism in place to weed these people out or make sure they don't get into the program, because only entrepreneurs should be in the entrepreneurship program. And my response to him was that, it's very difficult for us to know at a particular point in time how entrepreneurial somebody is. We can measure some things, we can do some things to assess them, but I don't know where somebody is at 22, where they're going to be at 30. And I've seen that with some of our students, the ones I thought, in fact, just recently, a student of mine checked in and has started a business and is doing well, and I thought, I would have never guessed that student would have started a business. I didn't think they were that entrepreneurial in how they manifested their behavior. They just didn't seem like they would be willing to take the risks. There were a lot of things that I thought, at that point in time when I was working with a student, I didn't think, not that entrepreneurial. But 5-7 years later, they've got a business, they're doing well, and it's a testament to the fact that I think some of these things happen over time, and experiences and socialization and upbringing mentoring and coaching. Even dramatic life events can alter the path that you're on. And I've even seen it in this class where students say, the class, this class, and one of the other classes I teach in the undergraduate program, this class shaped me. It pushed me in a different direction. It opened me up to possibilities that I didn't think were out there. And so I think it's this interesting discussion that we could probably go round and round on, but something to think about, and something to discuss as we move through this experience of Entrepreneurship 621. Now, why? Why would people do this unnatural act? Why do people become entrepreneurs? And there's a litany of reasons why people would become an entrepreneur. And, they everything from they just don't work well by having somebody, they just can't have a boss, to they're very creative, or they really want freedom, in the sense that they have high self-efficacy, and they just see themselves as being able to do what they want to do. And others come about this entrepreneurial thing because they're disenchanted with their career. They don't like the organization they work for. Maybe they got laid off or they were fired. We saw that a lot during the recession, the recent recession, where people jumped into businesses, starting businesses because they had no other choice. It was sort of a forced entrepreneurship. In order to survive and keep things going, they had to engage a path of business ownership. So the litany of reasons are out there, and I think it becomes very interesting, if you talk to people why they started a business. I'm thinking of one particular entrepreneur I worked with a few years back, had a very successful company, very interesting product, and I said to him, why did you launch this business? And the story behind that was he was working for another company. He was very happy working there. He liked the company, liked the industry, and so much so that he was really thinking ahead, in terms of product development and changes in the industry, and he saw some changes coming in the industry that were going to affect his company, his job. And he took that information to his boss, which was the owner of the company at the time, and said, hey, I think we need to start developing new products to address these coming changes in their industry. The use of particular types of chemicals was becoming frowned upon, and ultimately legislation was going to lead to the outlawing of certain types of chemicals because of their toxicity and the environmental impact and those kind of things. And so he was saying, basically we should be ahead of the curve, and I've got this idea for a new product, and and he said the response from his boss was, that's going to be too expensive, and those changes are coming way down the road, and we don't have the time. But he kept at it. He kept pushing his boss, and finally his boss said, well, if you want to do it, you can do it, but you're going to have to do it on your own time, because I'm not paying, I want you focusing on productivity and getting our existing products out in the marketplace. And he said, okay, that's fine. I'll do it on my own time. So he did. He went, he worked in his spare time in his garage. He built a prototype product that actually worked, that didn't use the harmful chemicals. He took that back to his boss, and he said his boss was still a little skeptical. He said, well, let's take it to a trade show and we'll see what people think of it. Took it to the trade show. They got pretty good response. And he thought, well, this is great. This, my boss is going to love this now. We've got pretty good response to this product. And he came back, and his boss said, no, I don't think it's worth pursuing. And he was just heartbroken. He said he was crushed. He put all this time and effort into it. He could see that there was an opportunity here, and he felt like, this change in the industry was going to, maybe if they didn't change, somebody else was going to, and that was going to jeopardize his job. And finally he came to the point, he said, I had never thought about being an entrepreneur, never even given it a thought about starting my own business. But at this point, I thought that's the only thing I can do. And so he did. He left the company, started his own business, manufacturing that product. He was immediately sued by his former employer, who said that he was stealing his product designs and things like that. It ended up being a long, arduous process. He prevailed in the lawsuit, so he was able to beat the old company that he worked for. He's now an industry leader. He actually put his former employer out of business. Very successful company, very interesting products. But as we go back to again, well, like, why do people become entrepreneurs? This guy had no no life path, no inkling that he was ever going to become an entrepreneur, and voila, through happenstance, through life events, through work experience, he becomes an entrepreneur. And you see that time and time again as I talk to people. They fall into this entrepreneurship thing in very, very different ways. Just talking to a company that I've worked with recently, the owner, she became, disenchanted where she was working and decided, maybe I'll start, my own business. And so you see a lot of that where people, they get great work experience and they see the flaws of the business, or they see that the business owners don't want to do certain things, or they're ignoring certain markets that have potential. And they think, well, I could do that too. And I've had a number of entrepreneurs that said the reason they became entrepreneurs is because they looked around at the place they were working at and they saw the owner and they thought, this guy or this gal, they're not that sharp. I could do this. If they could do it, I could do it too. So this myriad of reasons why people become entrepreneurs is really, really interesting, and I think worthy of sort of delving into, because you may be that, what I call the latent entrepreneur. I've run into lots of people that said, oh, I'll never be an entrepreneur. And I think there's a lot of people that believe that don't really understand what entrepreneurship is and haven't reached that point in life where this triangulation of events, these things that come together and converge, that result in kind of a perfect storm, that result in them taking the leap to become a business owner. Maybe that just hasn't happened for you yet. So I think something to keep in the back of your mind as we traverse this experience process. All right, one of my very, very favorite parts of talking to people about entrepreneurship is everyone an entrepreneur? And I vividly remember this. A couple of years ago, I was having coffee in downtown Riverside with a city representative from the city of Riverside, and we were in a little coffee shop in downtown. Great little environment. Really neat establishment. I don't drink coffee, but the tea they had was phenomenal. And we're sitting there chit-chatting about the state of entrepreneurship and what's going on in entrepreneurship. And the city official said, well, this is a great little entrepreneurial success story. And I looked around and I thought, well, this is an interesting little business, but it's a coffee shop. And it's a little tiny establishment, and it probably employs 5 to 7 people, and it's owned by a family. And I'm thinking to myself, I guess you could call this an entrepreneurial success story if you use a loose definition. And I mentioned this to the person. I said, I think the term entrepreneurship is losing its meaning. Entrepreneur and entrepreneurship are losing their meaning. So if I use a loose definition, this little coffee shop, anyone who starts a business, anybody that's got the courage and the willingness to take the risk to launch a business enterprise, I think that, for me, that's enough to be called an entrepreneur. And that's what I told this person. I said, yeah, this is if you use my loose definition, this is an entrepreneur. These people are entrepreneurs, and this is an entrepreneurial company. But is the business owner entrepreneurial beyond just simply taking the risk? And the person kind of gave me this odd look, and I said, well, let me give you a couple of examples of where I'm headed with this, because I want to try and make my point and see if it resonates with you. I said, using a loose definition, everybody who starts a business is an entrepreneur. But is every business owner entrepreneurial? Let's see. And so I said, let's take a look at, I said, have you ever heard of a place called Dominic's Pizza? And he said, no, is that a local business? I said, no, it's not. It is local, but it didn't start local. I said, so this is where I'm headed. I said, Dominic's Pizza was a little pizza pie shop founded in Ypsilanti, Michigan. And 2 brothers started this. And you see in the picture here, one of the brothers getting ready to put the pies in the Volkswagen Bug and go make the deliveries. Looks snowy and cold there. Glad I'm not there right now. I said, so that's, that's this coffee shop. That's the two guys, the two gals, the small group of people that started this business, and they've got this one location, and they're not doing anything really innovative. They've got good products. The customers like them, but there's no real innovation. There's no real sense that they're going to change their industry, that they're going to be innovative, that they're going to be groundbreaking, that they're going to be a paradigm shift in their industry. I said, it's just, they're not thinking any bigger than just this one store, which is what you see with a lot of small companies. They're content to have a lifestyle business, a one-store operation, a small operation where they don't have many headaches, that it becomes a good job replacement for them. They make a decent wage. They're never going to get super rich at it, but they like what they do. They like coming to work every day. They like being their own boss, and that's enough for them. It really is. It truly is enough for them. I have a friend that owns a craft brewery, and he's got designs for it being bigger, but he said if it doesn't get any bigger than it already is, I love my job. I love what I do. I can come to work every day. Nobody tells me what to do. I make a decent, living doing this. I get to drink beer. It's fun. That's a lifestyle business. So Dominic's Pizza, many of you may know this, Dominic's Pizza wasn't just a lifestyle, but they weren't. The two brothers, well, actually one of the brothers wasn't content to just be a little neighborhood pie shop. So Tom, one of the brothers, basically, his other brother didn't want to quit his full-time job. I think he was a postman, and ultimately he decided to sell his share of the business to his brother Tom. And so Tom took it to the next level because Tom had designs, Tom had ideas, Tom had an interest in taking it somewhere beyond. And so he expanded from one shop to 3 shops, and then he started looking at innovations and how can we do things better and differently. And ultimately what he built was Domino's. So from Dominic's becomes Domino's. And so you go from sort of entrepreneur, loose definition, hey, started a business, but really in the early stages, they were just a small company. And were they very entrepreneurial? Maybe not at the initial stages, but over time, they were very entrepreneurial. I think there's a difference. Is every small business owner entrepreneurial? Tom Monahan wasn't content to have Dominic's Pie Shop for the rest of his life. He wanted to grow it into something more substantive. He saw opportunity. He was willing to take the risk. He was willing to embrace innovation, and he built Domino's. So an interesting look at this idea that there's lifestyle businesses, small businesses. Everybody's an entrepreneur if they start a business, but if they take it to the next level, if they engage in doing lots of different really unique things that we know are entrepreneurial, that to me is a difference maker. Let me use another example, maybe a more current example. How many of you have gone to, and I've done this, gone to a sporting event or a music concert or something like that, and you've encountered somebody walking up to the venue. Maybe it doesn't look exactly like that picture, but you get the drift. There are the people outside the venue, commonly called scalpers, and they have tickets available. And if you need a ticket, you can buy a ticket from them right there on the street. And so essentially these are little individual entrepreneurs, right? They've gone to the trouble of getting the tickets from some source, taking the risk of reselling them on the day of the event to people that are looking for tickets. So they're this little mini business, self-contained. And a lot of these little scalpers will work every concert or every event at a particular venue. So there may be one guy or many guys and gals that are men and women that are working these events, maybe let's say at the Staples Center. And so they're like these little mini self-contained entrepreneurs. So the question is the scalper an entrepreneur when you put them into the context of StubHub? StubHub is essentially a ticket scalper, but StubHub is a ginormous ticket scalper. And so the genesis of StubHub was two guys in college um, who were having trouble. I think they were having trouble either getting tickets or getting rid of tickets. Um, and they thought, gosh, the challenge with selling tickets or buying tickets from the scalper on the street is, one, you don't know if the tickets are counterfeit. If they are, there's no money back guarantee. You're not going to go back and get your money from the scalper. That person's long gone. There's a whole trust thing going on, and you're never sure if you're getting and so you may not get a good deal. You don't have lots of options. You can't go up on the street to a scalper and say, well, what have you got available? Okay, that's good. I'm going to walk down a half block and I'm going to talk to this other scalper, and I'll come back and, if your ticket price is better, it doesn't work that way. So they looked at it and said, boy, there's a lot of ticket scalpers out there. There's a lot of events. There's a lot of demand for people to buy and sell tickets. Why don't we create a venue where people can do this? And voila, here comes StubHub. And so it makes the process of buying tickets on the secondary market a lot easier, because if you're a buyer, you've got the StubHub guarantee. The StubHub does some things to make sure that the tickets are legit, and if they aren't legit, you can get your money back. So there's a trust mechanism. You're not paying cash. You can pay by credit card. There's all kinds of things. And if you're selling tickets, it gives you an outlet to sell your tickets. I've got season tickets to the Ontario Reign. If I wanted to sell some of my tickets, I could do that through StubHub. I could do it through Ticketmaster, which is kind of entered into this kind of business now as well. So it creates a nice model, and it also looks at this and says, well, there's this scalping things going on all over the country, all over the world, and we could be the business that could take advantage of that. And of course they did. And the nice thing about StubHub was they got into the market, they got traction, and ultimately were bought by eBay for, I think, $300 million. So, what's the difference between the ticket scalper and StubHub? The only difference is StubHub saw the larger opportunity. They used innovation and technology. They were willing to take the risk. They were willing to scale up. They did a lot of really unique things, very entrepreneurial things that an individual ticket scalper didn't. And why wouldn't it? All these individual ticket scalpers, couldn't they see that opportunity? What's going on there? So that's where we go with this idea of, is everyone an entrepreneur? Because I believe that just because you start a business, and I think it's open for interpretation, just because you start a business doesn't mean you're entrepreneurial. And I think there's probably a spectrum of entrepreneurial behaviors, characteristics, and traits that people employ, and they may be entrepreneurial, but they don't deploy them, or they may be entrepreneurial and they do deploy them, and they become StubHub, or So I think it's a really interesting dynamic to take a look at, because I see a lot of companies out there that I think, wow, this could be huge, but they aren't. Or this could be huge, or this will never be huge, but the person's really entrepreneurial, but they're never going to get there because they picked the wrong idea. So it's a really interesting concept. And I think one last piece of the puzzle too is a very local example is McDonald's, started by the McDonald brothers, Richard and Maurice. And in fact, there's a movie coming out called The Founder, which if you get a chance, I haven't seen the movie yet, but as soon as it's out, I'm going to go see it. And it's the story of the McDonald brothers, but more appropriately, it's the story of Ray Kroc, who essentially bought out the McDonald brothers and turned McDonald's into what it is now. And the real interesting part of the whole McDonald's story is that Richard and Maurice, Rich and Mac, Dick and Mac, were content to have their little successful fast food operation. They didn't see going global. That wasn't in their wheelhouse. They were happy to have their house on the hill here in San Bernardino. They were content to have a lifestyle business. They were unique and innovative, but only to a point. Ray Kroc comes along and sees the potential. There could be one of these in every town in America. We could be even more innovative. We could be more creative. We could really scale this up. And actually, he's the one that turned McDonald's into the worldwide phenomenon that it is. I think he was 52 when he ended up getting involved with McDonald's, so did it later in life. So this whole idea of, is everyone an entrepreneur, is really interesting, because people start businesses and they may not really be very entrepreneurial. All right, so next steps for you in this particular experience, this phase of the class, is to grapple with the readings. As I mentioned previously, I don't use textbooks or a textbook for this class. I have selected readings. Some of them are very short. I do have a textbook chapter in this experience section, but they're mostly very brief and to the point readings. I want you to watch the October Sky movie. If you've seen it already, this is a movie from the 1990s, if I remember correctly, the date. I can't recall the exact date, but if you've seen the movie, you need to watch it again. Because and if you haven't seen the movie, you just watch it. But this is a movie, and it's not about entrepreneurship. It's a movie, you'll see what it's about, but it's not about entrepreneurship. But I want you to watch it. Really, I want you to watch it from the perspective of the readings. So do all the readings and then watch the movie. And watch it from the perspective of, can I see entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial behavior in this movie? Is there any? And if so, what does it look like? And what implications does it have? So that's, one of the things I found to be really fun about teaching is finding things that have nothing to do with entrepreneurship and making connections. And I think you'll see an interesting dynamic in the October Sky movie. So, and then once you've done the readings and the movie, then you jump into the discussions, and I will be there as well to kind of pipe in on your input. And then last but not least, you want to do the takeaways. So at the end of the module, once you've gone through the readings, the movie, the discussions, then you sit back and you say, what are the most salient, significant learning points I got from this experience? So experience 1, what are the 3 to 5 really highly pertinent things that I want to take away, that me personally, I want to take away from this experience section? I want to remember them. Those are the things I want to be able to go back to and say, yes, that's something that I remember and I could actually use, or, whatever. So that's the piece of the puzzle for the learning takeaways. So 3 to 5, and make sure when you present your learning takeaways that you number them so that I can see the number of them, or bullet point them. You could bullet point them too if you wanted. But just give me the takeaways, and they can be short sentences. So that's, I think that's one way to sort of put an end point on each of the experiences. Also, during I always want to call these modules, but this experience, because it is essentially a module, you really definitely want to start work on your personal entrepreneurial discovery project. So go on to Schoology, download the handout that describes the PED assignment, and hit it at the bare minimum for this in this first experience, that very first aspect of the personal entrepreneurial discovery, which is the personal assessments, which are 4 separate assessments that are done online. I want you to get in there and I want you to complete those no later than January 18th. Sooner is always better, because as soon as every student in the class completes the assessments, I can go in and take the data and crunch the data and give it back to you so you can start working on integrating that into your personal entrepreneurial discovery assignment. And so the sooner everybody's done with that, the sooner I can take the data, not manipulate it, but crunch it, and feed it back to you so you can actually use it. So again, if you have any questions on any of the things that we're going through in this experience phase, please do not suffer in silence. Reach out to me. There's multiple ways you can get a hold of me. You can email me. I will warn you, though, that given the multiple roles I play at Cal State San Bernardino, I get an enormous amount of email. Most days I'm getting 200 to 300 emails a day, and they're not all junk mail. A lot of it's stuff I have to respond to and actually do stuff with. So email is one. Cell phone is another way, a great way of catching me. Texting me is good. If you text me, make sure you put your name in the text, because I don't know who you are just based on your phone number. We can Skype too. And so even though this is an online class, I want to make it as personal and as interactive as possible. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And if you need assistance, you need input, that's a hallmark of a face-to-face class, is that students can come up to me after class or in class. They can ask questions. A little harder faced in the online domain, but you can be, proactive, and if you need something, you need to reach out. And I try to respond to everything as it comes in. I carve out a piece of each day for my online class, and as stuff comes in real time, I try and answer it. But if most cases, I can get back to you within 24 hours. And if you catch me at the right moment, I'll get back to you within 10 seconds of your sending the email, basically. So excited again to be working with you guys. I'm really looking forward to seeing how you engage with this first experience. I'm really looking forward to the discussions, and I will be looking forward to you working with you again as we head into experience 2. And so good luck. Bring your A game to this course, and show me how, as I said before, I've been really impressed with our online MBA students, and so I expect to see great things out of this group as well. So look forward to seeing you again in Experience 2.